The red warning lights flashed across the control room of the Galactic Monitoring Station. Lieutenant Kara Mills jumped from her chair as the emergency signal broke through the usual static of deep space communication. She had been watching the endless darkness between stars for 3 years. And this was the first real distress call she had ever received. "Control. This is Lieutenant Mills. I have an emergency transmission coming in," she called into her headset. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, trying to clean up the broken signal that crackled through the speakers. The voice that came through was strange and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But the words were clear enough through the universal translator. "Help us, please. Someone help us. Our ship is dying. 50,000 souls aboard. Life support failing. We cannot repair the damage." Kara's heart raced as she recorded the message. The signal was weak and kept breaking up, but she could make out coordinates and ship identification. The vessel was called Serenitas, and it belonged to something called the Zephyrian Colonial Fleet. Within minutes, the message reached Admiral Sarah Chun aboard the flagship Indomitable. Chun was a tough woman who had spent most of her life fighting pirates and hostile aliens in the dangerous outer systems. She had short gray hair and scars on her hands from years of space combat. When she heard the distress call, she did not hesitate for even a second. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun." Her voice boomed across the communication channels of the human fleet. "We have a rescue operation. 50,000 civilians in immediate danger. I want every ship ready for emergency jump in 30 minutes. The human ships were not the biggest in the galaxy, but they were strong and fast. Humans had learned to build tough vessels because their home world, Earth, was a dangerous place. Other alien races called Earth a death world because of its violent weather, deadly animals, and constant natural disasters. This had made humans very good at surviving when things went wrong. Commander Marcus Webb ran through the corridors of the Indomitable, checking that all rescue teams were ready. Webb was a big man with kind eyes who had saved hundreds of people during his 20 years in the fleet. He made sure the medical teams had supplies for alien biology, and that the engineering crews had equipment that could work on foreign technology. "Remember," Webb told his team, "we don't know what these Zephyrians look like or what they need to survive. Be ready for anything. Our job is to keep them alive until we can get them to a safe world." Dr. Elena Vasquez was already studying what little information they had about Zephyrian biology. She was the fleet's expert on alien life, and her small laboratory was filled with medical equipment designed to help dozens of different species. The early data showed that Zephyrians were very different from humans. They seemed delicate and lived on worlds with light gravity and perfect weather. They appeared to be crystalline in nature, she told Admiral Chun over the video link. Their bodies might be made of some kind of living mineral. They probably evolved on a very peaceful world with no predators or harsh conditions. Chun nodded. "Just make sure we can keep them alive, Doctor. We'll worry about the details later." The 12 ships of the human rescue fleet jumped into hyperspace, pushing their engines harder than usual. Every minute counted when dealing with life support failure. The crews worked in shifts, with some people sleeping while others monitored the ship systems. They had to travel for 3 days to reach the coordinates from the distress call. During the journey, more messages came from the Serenitas. Each one was weaker than the last. The Zephyrians described how their ship had hit some kind of energy storm that damaged their main power systems. They were slowly freezing as their heating systems failed. Their air recycling equipment was breaking down. Worst of all, they could not fix the problems because their repair crews had been hurt in the original accident. "We do not know if anyone will hear this message," came one transmission. "Our children are becoming cold. Our elders have begun to dim. If any beings of good will receive this signal, Please know that we tried to reach the colony worlds of Sector 7. We carry the last hopes of our people." The messages made the human crew's work even harder. They knew what it was like to be far from home and in danger. Many of them had grown up on frontier worlds where help was always days or weeks away. They understood the fear and desperation in those alien voices. Captain Lisa Torres, who commanded the medical ship Mercy, prepared her hospital bays for mass casualties. She had no idea what Zephyrian anatomy looked like, but she filled every room with different atmospheric mixtures and temperature settings. Her medical staff studied the limited biological data, trying to guess what these alien beings might need to survive. "We might have to treat 50,000 patients who are completely different from any life form we have encountered," she told her medical team. "But we have saved human colonies with less equipment and worse conditions. We can do this." As the fleet approached the distress coordinates, their long-range sensors finally detected the Zephyrian ship. It was drifting powerless in space, much larger than the human vessels, but clearly damaged. Parts of its hull were dark, and there were signs of internal explosions. Most worrying of all, the life support readings were almost at zero. "All ships, prepare for immediate rescue operations," Admiral Chun announced. "This is what we trained for. These people are counting on us, and we will not let them down." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the crippled alien vessel. For the first time, they could see the ship clearly. It was beautiful, made of what looked like living crystal that had once glowed with soft light. Now most of it was dark and cold. The humans could see breach points where the hull had been damaged, hastily sealed with emergency patches that were already failing. Inside that dying ship, 50,000 alien souls waited for salvation that was finally within reach. The moment the human fleet arrived at the coordinates, every person aboard the 12 ships began moving with practiced efficiency. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the dark alien vessel through the main viewing screen. The Serenitas was enormous, at least 5 times larger than her flagship. But it hung motionless in space like a dying whale. "Sensor report," Chun ordered. "Life signs are weak, but present throughout the ship," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from his station. "I'm reading approximately 47,000 biological signatures. Temperature inside the vessel is dropping fast. Hull breaches in 17 sections, all sealed with emergency patches." Dr. Vasquez appeared on the communication screen from her laboratory. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the biosignatures we're detecting. The Zephyrians appear to have very low body temperature compared to humans. What feels cold to them might be freezing death to us. We need to be extremely careful about environmental controls." "Understood," Chun replied. "Commander Webb, what's our rescue plan?" Webb pulled up a tactical display that showed both ships. "We dock with their main airlock here." He pointed to a section of the alien vessel. "First team goes aboard to assess the situation and establish communication. Second team begins emergency repairs to their life support. Third team starts evacuation procedures for the most critical patients." "How long do we have?" Chun asked. "Based on the rate their life support is failing, maybe 18 hours before we start losing them in large numbers." The Admiral nodded grimly. 18 hours to save 50,000 aliens they had never met before. She had led rescue operations for human colonies, but those people shared the same basic biology. This was completely different. "All ships, begin rescue operations immediately," she broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, we are dealing with a species we know almost nothing about. Follow Dr. Vasquez's medical protocols exactly. Any mistakes could kill the people we're trying to save." The rescue ships moved into position around the Serenitas. The human vessels looked tiny next to the massive alien ship, like small boats surrounding a cruise liner. Docking tubes extended from the human ships. Seeking connection points on the crystalline hull. Commander Webb led the first boarding party. He wore a full environmental suit with extra sensor equipment to monitor alien atmospheric conditions. Behind him came Chief Engineer Rodriguez and Medical Specialist Kumar, along with 6 other crew members. They carried portable life support equipment, emergency medical supplies, and universal communication devices. "Connection established," reported the docking officer. "Airlock pressure equalized. You're clear to board." Webb stepped through the airlock into the alien ship and immediately knew he was in a place unlike anywhere humans had ever been. The corridors were tall and curved, made of the same crystal-like material as the hull. Soft blue light came from the walls themselves, though it was much dimmer than it should have been. The air felt different too, lighter and filled with a faint musical hum. "My God," whispered Kumar behind him. "It's beautiful." They had taken only a few steps when they encountered their first Zephyrian. The being was tall and thin, almost floating as it moved toward them. Its body was translucent, like living glass, and patterns of light moved under its skin. When it saw the humans, the light patterns changed to rapid flashes of blue and white. "Universal translator is working," Webb said into his communicator. "It's trying to communicate." The device in Webb's hand began speaking in the same musical voice they had heard in the distress calls. "Beings from the rescue ships, you have come. We did not dare hope. I am third speaker Lirale. Please, our people are dying." "We're here to help," Webb replied, speaking slowly so the translator could work properly. "Show us to your most critical patients first. Our medical teams are standing by." Lirale led them deeper into the ship. As they walked, Webb could see how desperate the situation had become. Zephyrians lay motionless in the corridors, their internal light barely flickering. Some appeared to be families, with smaller beings curled against larger ones for warmth. The temperature was indeed very cold, and getting colder. "Our heating systems failed 3 days ago," Lirale explained. "We have been using emergency power cells, but they are nearly exhausted. The young ones cannot survive much longer in these conditions." They reached what seemed to be a medical area. Hundreds of Zephyrians lay on crystal beds that had once glowed with healing light. Now they were dark and cold. Medical attendants moved between the patients, but Webb could see they had almost no working equipment left. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through his communicator. "Commander, I'm receiving your video feed. These beings appear to be silicon-based rather than carbon-based like us. Their metabolism is completely different. We need to be very careful about temperature, atmosphere, and electromagnetic exposure. What do you recommend?" Webb asked. "Start with the heating systems. Get their environmental controls working again. But use our portable heaters carefully. Too much heat too fast could damage their cellular structure." Webb's team spread out through the ship. Chief Rodriguez went to the engine rooms with a team of engineers, carrying human power cells and repair equipment. The Zephyrian technology was unlike anything they had seen before, but the basic principles of power generation and environmental control were universal. "These systems are incredible," Rodriguez reported as he examined the alien machinery. "Everything is grown rather than built. The circuits are living crystal that conducts energy through harmonic vibrations. No wonder they can't repair it themselves. You would need to grow replacement parts over months or years." Meanwhile, medical teams from the human ships began arriving. They set up portable environmental chambers in the Serenitas corridors, creating small zones where Zephyrian patients could be stabilized. The work was slow and careful. Every alien physiology was different, and one mistake could kill a patient they were trying to save. Captain Torres arrived with the main medical team from the Mercy. She immediately began organizing triage areas. The sickest Zephyrians were moved to human, environmental chambers where temperature and atmosphere could be precisely controlled. Others were treated where they lay, with portable heaters and breathing equipment. Their biology is fascinating, Torres reported to Dr. Vasquez. They don't breathe in the same way we do. They seem to absorb energy directly from their environment through their crystalline skin. But they're extremely fragile. Even minor changes in temperature or pressure cause immediate stress. The hours passed quickly as more human teams boarded the alien ship. They worked in shifts, with fresh crews replacing tired ones every few hours. Slowly, they began to make progress. Emergency power was restored to critical sections. Heating systems came back online in the medical areas. The most critical patients were stabilized, but there were so many. 50,000 Zephyrians filled the massive ship, and most of them needed immediate medical attention. The human fleet had resources for maybe 1,000 patients at best. They would have to evacuate the aliens to human ships and provide ongoing care during the journey to the nearest colony world. Admiral, Commander Webb reported after 12 hours of continuous rescue operations, "We've stabilized about 8,000 patients. But we need to start evacuation soon. This ship won't last much longer, and we can't save everyone if we stay here." Chun looked at the tactical display showing both fleets. Her ships were already overcrowded with alien refugees. The medical bays were full, and crew quarters had been converted to emergency hospitals. They were doing everything possible, but it might not be enough. "Begin full evacuation," she ordered. "Prioritize the children and elderly first. We'll make room somehow." As the evacuation began, the Zephyrians showed remarkable cooperation despite their weakness. The stronger ones helped carry those who could not move. Their light pattern communication allowed them to coordinate without sound, flowing through the ship like a gentle river of living crystal. For the first time since receiving the distress call, Admiral Chun began to believe they might actually save these people. The evacuation proceeded faster than anyone had expected. The Zephyrians were unlike any species the humans had encountered before. They moved with fluid grace despite their weakness, and their ability to communicate through light patterns made organizing the rescue much easier. Where human refugees might have panicked or argued about who should be saved first, the Zephyrians flowed through their dying ship in perfect coordination. Dr. Vasquez watched from the medical bay of the Indomitable as the first group of Zephyrian patients was brought aboard. She had prepared for this moment by studying every piece of data they had collected, but seeing the aliens in person still took her breath away. They were beautiful beyond description. Each Zephyrian stood about 7 feet tall, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved under their translucent skin in patterns that looked like slow lightning. Their faces were angular and delicate, with large eyes that shifted color from deep blue to brilliant silver. When they moved, they seemed to float rather than walk. "Incredible," she whispered to her medical assistant. "They're like living art." The first patient was a young Zephyrian that third speaker Lirale identified as her offspring. The small being's internal light was very dim, barely visible. Dr. Vasquez carefully scanned the child with her medical equipment, trying to understand how to help. "Body temperature is far below normal range," she reported, "but I'm getting strange readings. The cellular structure appears to be crystalline, but it's unlike any mineral we know. It's definitely alive, but operates on completely different principles than carbon-based life." She began treatment slowly and carefully. Human medical equipment was designed for flesh and blood, not living crystal. She used gentle heat lamps to gradually warm the child's body, while monitoring every vital sign she could detect. To her relief, the young Zephyrian began to respond. Its internal light grew slightly brighter, and the light patterns under its skin began moving more quickly. Lirale stood beside the treatment bed. her own light patterns showing what the translator interpreted as gratitude and relief. "You are saving my child," she said in her musical voice. "We had given up hope." "That's what we do," Dr. Vasquez replied with a smile. "We help people." Throughout the human fleet, similar scenes were playing out in every available space. The ship's corridors had been converted to temporary medical wards. Crew quarters became recovery rooms. Even the cargo bays were filled with crystal beds where Zephyrians rested under carefully controlled environmental systems. Captain Torres worked tirelessly on the medical ship Mercy, which had become the main hospital for the most critical patients. She had never treated silicon-based life before, but the basic principles of medicine still applied. The Zephyrians needed warmth, proper atmosphere, and careful monitoring. Her staff adapted human medical procedures to work with alien biology. "They're responding well to treatment," she reported to Admiral Chun. "Their biology is strange, but not impossible to work with. The main challenge is their sensitivity. Small changes that wouldn't affect a human can cause serious problems for them." The rescue operation continued through the night. More Zephyrians were brought aboard the human ships every hour. The engineering teams had managed to restore partial power to the Serenitas, buying precious time, but everyone knew the alien ship could not be saved. It was too badly damaged, and the Zephyrians lacked the technology to make proper repairs. Commander Webb coordinated the evacuation from the bridge of the Serenitas, working alongside Zephyrian leaders to ensure the process went smoothly. He had learned to recognize some of their light-pattern communications, though he still needed the universal translator for complex conversations. "Your people are very organized," he told first speaker Zaylan, the eldest Zephyrian leader. "In a crisis like this, humans would probably be arguing and pushing to get onto the rescue ships first." Zaylan's light patterns showed what seemed to be amusement. "We are a peaceful species, Commander Webb. We have no experience with conflict or competition. When faced with danger, we naturally work together." "That's going to make things much easier," Webb replied. "We should have everyone evacuated within the next 6 hours." As dawn approached on the human ship's chronometers, the evacuation entered its final phase. The last groups of Zephyrians were brought aboard, including the ship's crew and technical specialists. The Serenitas was finally empty of living beings, though it still drifted in space like a crystal monument to their near-disaster. Admiral Chun stood on her bridge, looking at the status reports from all 12 ships. They had done something remarkable. 50,000 aliens were now safe aboard the human fleet, receiving medical care and preparing for the journey to a colony world where they could rebuild their lives. "Final count," Admiral reported Commander Webb as he returned from the alien vessel. 49,738 Zephyrians successfully evacuated. "We lost about 300 who were too far gone when we arrived." Chan nodded solemnly. Losing anyone was hard, but saving over 99% of the refugees was better than anyone had dared hope when they first received the distress call. Dr. Vasquez appeared on the communication screen, looking tired but satisfied. "Medical status report. Most patients are stable and improving. Their biology is actually quite hardy once we understand how to work with it. I expect full recovery for the majority within a few days." "Outstanding work, Doctor," Chem replied. "How long until we can begin the journey to New Geneva Colony?" "That's the nearest world with proper medical facilities. The patients should be ready for space travel within 12 hours, Vasquez said. "We'll need to maintain careful environmental controls during the journey, but it's definitely possible." Throughout the human ships, the rescued Zephyrians were experiencing something they had never known before: contact with a truly alien species. They studied their human rescuers with curiosity, fascinated by these beings who seemed to be made of solid flesh instead of crystal. who generated heat from within their bodies, and who moved with such determined energy. Young Zephyrians gathered around human crew members, their light patterns bright with curiosity. The humans showed them pictures of Earth and human colony worlds, describing their civilization and technology. In return, the Zephyrians shared stories of their homeworld, which had been a paradise of crystal, cities and singing gardens before its sun began to die. Your species is very different from ours, observed third speaker Lorelei as she talked with Dr. Vasquez in the medical bay. You seem to generate power from within yourselves, while we draw it from our environment. You are like small stars, burning with internal fire. Dr. Vasquez laughed at the poetic description. I suppose that's one way to look at human metabolism. Your people are more like living solar panels, absorbing energy from outside sources. It is a good thing you found us, Lorelei continued. Your internal fire makes you perfect for rescue work. You bring warmth wherever you go. The conversation was interrupted by a communication alert. Admiral Chun's voice came through the ship's speakers, addressing all crews and passengers. Attention all personnel and our Zephyrian guests. We will begin our journey to New Geneva Colony in 6 hours. The trip will take 4 days at maximum safe speed. Medical teams will continue monitoring all patients during the voyage. I want to personally congratulate every member of this fleet on conducting a perfect rescue operation. We should all be proud of what we accomplished here today. In the medical bays and temporary quarters throughout the fleet, both humans and Zephyrians felt a sense of satisfaction and relief. The crisis was over. The rescue had been successful beyond all expectations. The journey ahead would be routine, just a matter of maintaining life support and medical care until they reached the safety of a human colony world. Dr. Vasquez made her final rounds of the evening, checking on patients and ensuring all environmental systems were working properly. Everything looked perfect. The Zephyrians were responding well to treatment, their vital signs were strong, and their beautiful internal light was growing brighter by the hour. As she completed her reports and prepared to get some much-needed sleep, she felt proud of what they had accomplished. 50,000 lives saved through quick thinking, careful planning, and the kind of determination that had made humanity successful throughout the galaxy. She had no way of knowing that in just a few hours, everything would begin to go terribly wrong. Dr. Vasquez woke to emergency alarms blaring throughout the medical bay. She had only been asleep for 3 hours, but something was clearly very wrong. She rolled out of her bed and ran to the nearest patient monitoring station, still wearing her sleep clothes. The readings made no sense. 12 Zephyrian patients had died during the night. Their vital signs had simply faded away while they slept. Worse, many of the other patients were showing signs of distress. Their internal light was dimming, and their biosignatures were weakening rapidly. Computer, what is the cause of patient deterioration? She asked the medical AI. Unknown. All environmental factors are within acceptable ranges for Zephyrian biology. No toxic substances detected. No pathogens present. Dr. Vasquez felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. She ran to the nearest patient, a middle-aged Zephyrian who had been recovering well just hours earlier. Now his crystal body was flickering weakly, and his light pattern showed obvious pain. What's happening to you? She whispered, running her scanner over his body. The readings were confusing. His cellular structure was breaking down at the molecular level, but there was no apparent cause. Captain Torres's voice came through the communicator from the Mercy. Elena, are you seeing this? We have 15 dead and dozens more failing. It's like something is poisoning them, but I can't find any toxins. Same here, Dr. Vasquez replied. 12 dead, more dying. The symptoms don't match anything in our database. Run full spectrum analysis on everything. Air, water, food, electromagnetic fields, radiation levels. Throughout the human fleet, the crisis was spreading. Medical alarms sounded on every ship as Zephyrian patients began dying without explanation. The beings who had been recovering so well just hours before were now fading like candles in the wind. Third, Speaker Lorele appeared at Dr. Vasquez's side, her own light patterns showing fear and confusion. "Doctor, my child is becoming weak again. What is happening to us?" "I don't know," Dr. Vasquez replied honestly. "But we're going to find out. I promise you that." She called an emergency meeting of all medical staff across the fleet. On the main communication screen, she could see the tired and worried faces of human doctors and nurses. "From every ship, status reports," she ordered. 7 dead on the Defiance, reported Dr. Kim. "Symptoms started about 4 hours ago. 19 dead on the Mercy," said Captain Torres grimly. "The rate is accelerating. We're losing patients faster than we can treat them." 23 dead on the Valiant, added Dr. Patel. "I've run every test I can think of. Air composition is perfect. Temperature is ideal. No harmful chemicals or radiation detected." Dr. Vasquez felt panic rising in her chest. They had saved these people from certain death, only to watch them die mysteriously aboard the human ships. It was a nightmare beyond description. "There has to be something we're missing," she said. "Run comparative analysis between the Serenitas environment and our ship environment. Check every single variable, no matter how small." For the next 2 hours, human medical teams worked frantically while more Zephyrians died around them. They tested air samples, analyzed electromagnetic readings, measured gravitational fields, and checked radiation levels. Everything appeared normal for Zephyrian biology. Then Dr. Patel made the discovery that changed everything. "Elena, I think I found something." His voice was shaky through the communicator. "I've been measuring electromagnetic field fluctuations around the patients. There's a pattern. The Zephyrians who are closest to humans are dying first." Dr. Vasquez felt her blood turn to ice. "What do you mean?" "The patients in beds nearest to human-occupied areas show the worst symptoms. The ones in isolated compartments are still stable. It's like proximity to humans is somehow harmful to them." She ran to her computer terminal and pulled up the casualty reports from all ships. When she plotted the locations of deaths and illnesses, the pattern was unmistakable. Every Zephyrian who had died was in a medical bay or compartment where humans worked closely with the patients. "My God," she whispered. "It's us. We're killing them." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. She called Admiral Chun immediately. "Admiral, we have a problem. Our presence aboard the ships is somehow lethal to the Zephyrians. The closer they are to humans, the faster they die." "That's impossible," Chun replied. "We've been monitoring every environmental factor." "Not every factor," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice breaking. "We never considered that humans themselves might be toxic to them." She ran more tests, working with desperate speed while more aliens died around her. The truth was worse than she had imagined. Human brains generated electromagnetic fields that were undetectable to human instruments, but devastating to Zephyrian cellular structure. The neural activity of human thoughts was literally scrambling the crystal matrix that formed the Zephyrian bodies. But that wasn't all. The vibrations from human footsteps, heartbeats, and voices created resonance frequencies that shattered Zephyrian cells from within. Even the heat radiating from human bodies, so gentle that it passed through environmental suits without being noticed, was slowly cooking the aliens' delicate internal organs. "We're walking weapons," she told Admiral Chun over the emergency communication channel. "Every breath we take, every step, every thought is killing them. The more we try to help, the faster they die." Chun was silent for a long moment. "How long do we have?" "At current rates, All patients will be dead within 12 hours. The only Zephians who might survive are the ones in completely isolated compartments with no human contact. Can we put them all in isolation? It's too late for most of them. The cellular damage is too severe. And even if we isolate the survivors, they'll need medical attention that we can't provide without killing them. Throughout the fleet, human crews began receiving the terrible news. The rescue mission that had seemed so successful was turning into a massacre. The very qualities that made humans good at surviving dangerous situations, their electromagnetic brain activity, their body heat, their physical vibrations were lethal to the gentle crystal beings they had tried to save. Commander Webb stood in the corridor outside his Zephyrian medical bay, unable to enter because his presence would mean death for the patients inside. Through the transparent wall, he could see third speaker Lyrale sitting beside her dying child. Her light patterns were dim with grief, and she looked up at him with understanding in her alien eyes. "She knows," he said to Dr. Vasquez over his communicator. "They all know what's happening. They can sense the electromagnetic fields we generate. To them, we must seem like walking storms of deadly energy." The Zephyrians did understand. Their scientists had figured out the same truth that the human doctors had discovered. The beings who had come so far to rescue them were inadvertently destroying them with their mere presence. The warmth and energy that made humans such effective survivors was like acid to Zephyrian biology in the final hours. As more aliens died despite all efforts to save them, the human crews watched helplessly from sealed compartments and remote monitoring stations. They could do nothing but observe as the beautiful crystal beings faded away one by one. The worst part was the Zephyrians' reaction. Instead of anger or blame, their final light pattern communications expressed gratitude. They understood that the humans had risked everything to save them. They knew that their deaths were not from malice or carelessness, but from the fundamental incompatibility between two very different forms of life. "They're thanking us," Dr. Vasquez said as she watched the translations of the dying aliens' messages. "Even as we kill them, they're thanking us for trying to help." Admiral Chun stood alone on her bridge, watching the casualty reports climb higher every hour. The rescue mission that should have been humanity's greatest triumph was becoming their most terrible tragedy. They had answered the call for help as they always did, bringing their technology, their determination, and their indomitable will to save lives, but they had also brought their nature as children of a death world, being so adapted to hostile environments that their very existence was poisonous to gentler forms of life. The final hours passed in terrible silence. Throughout the human fleet, the ships that had been filled with hope and celebration just days before now felt like floating tombs. The Zephyrians died quietly, their beautiful internal light fading until their crystal bodies became dark, and still Dr. Vasquez sat in her laboratory, staring at medical readings that told the story of complete failure. She had tried everything she could think of to slow the dying process. She had moved patients to the most isolated compartments, used remote medical equipment, even attempted treatment through robotic systems controlled from other ships. Nothing worked. The damage to Zephyrian cellular structure was too severe and too widespread. The last communication from third speaker Lyrale came at 0347 hours ship time. Her child had died 6 hours earlier, and she was now one of only 12 Zephyrians still alive in the entire fleet. Her light patterns were so dim that the universal translator could barely detect them. "Dr. Vasquez," came the musical voice, weaker now than a whisper. "I want you to know that we do not blame your people for what has happened. You came to save us when no one else would. You risked your lives for strangers. This is the greatest kindness any being can show." Dr. Vasquez leaned closer to the communication screen, tears running down her face. "I'm so sorry. We never knew. If we had known, we would have found another way. There was no other way, Lirale replied. Our ship was dying. Without your rescue, we would have perished in space. At least this way, some of us lived long enough to meet your people and learn that the universe contains beings of such goodness. Your child. I'm sorry, I couldn't save your child. My little one lived to see the inside of your ships, to experience the warmth you brought. That is more life than would have been possible without you. Please do not carry guilt for this. The communication ended there. Lirale's biosignature faded an hour later. Admiral Chun made her way through the corridors of the Indomitable, looking at the empty medical bays where crystal beds now held only dark, lifeless forms. The ship felt haunted. Every crew member she passed had the same expression of shock and grief. They had joined the rescue fleet to save lives, not to cause one of the greatest tragedies in galactic history. She stopped at the observation deck where Commander Webb stood looking out at the stars. The Serenitas was still visible in the distance, a dark monument to what might have been. Final count? She asked quietly. 49,738, Webb replied without turning around. All dead. The last one passed away 20 minutes ago. They stood in silence for a long time. Around them, the ship hummed with the normal sounds of human technology. Air recyclers, power conduits, gravity generators. All the things that made space livable for humans. All the things that had been lethal to the Zephyrians. I've been thinking about what Dr. Vasquez discovered, Webb said finally. About our electromagnetic fields and body heat. Do you realize what this means for first contact with other species? Chun nodded slowly. We might be walking death sentences for most alien life in the galaxy. The very qualities that helped us survive on Earth could make us impossible to coexist with. The galaxy is going to learn about this, Webb continued. Word will spread that humans answered a distress call and accidentally killed 50,000 innocents. They'll call us the Deathworlders who bring death wherever we go. Dr. Vasquez joined them on the observation deck, carrying a datapad with her final medical reports. She looked exhausted and broken, like someone who had watched her life's work turn to ash. I've completed the autopsy reports, she said. The cause of death was systematic cellular breakdown due to electromagnetic interference and thermal damage. In simple terms, our presence literally dissolved their bodies from the inside out. How long did they suffer? Chun asked. Not long, thankfully. The process was relatively quick once it started. But Admiral, there's something else you need to know. I've been analyzing Zephyrian biology in detail. This species wasn't just fragile. They were actively peaceful. Their entire evolution took place on a world without predators, without violence, without competition. They had no concept of harm or danger because they had never needed those concepts. What are you saying? I'm saying they were probably the most purely innocent species in the galaxy. They had no capacity for violence, no understanding of cruelty, no experience with death except from old age. We didn't just kill aliens, Admiral. We killed angels. The three humans stood together in the observation lounge, contemplating the magnitude of what had happened. The rescue fleet was now a funeral procession carrying the bodies of an entire species' hope for survival. The Zephyrian homeworld was dying, and these refugees had been their only chance to continue existing in the universe. What do we do now? Webb asked. We do our duty, Chun replied firmly. We take them to New Geneva Colony as planned. We make sure they receive a proper burial according to their customs. We file complete reports with Galactic Command and the Interspecies Council. And we make sure this never happens again. How do we prevent it from happening again? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her datapad. We develop new protocols for rescue operations. Remote assistance only. No direct contact until we can verify biological compatibility. It'll be slower and more difficult, but it's the only way to avoid another massacre. Admiral Chun activated her personal communication device and began recording her final mission log. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could hear the pain beneath the professional tone. Personal log, Admiral Sarah Chun. Commanding Terran Defense Coalition Fleet 7. Mission date 2387.156. We responded to a distress call from the Zephyrian colony ship Serenitas. 50,000 civilians were in immediate danger due to life support failure. Our rescue operation was initially successful. All passengers were evacuated from the damaged vessel and taken aboard our ships for medical treatment and transport to safety. She paused, looking out at the stars where the dead alien ship drifted. However, we have discovered that human biology is fundamentally incompatible with Zephyrian physiology. Our electromagnetic brain activity, body heat, and physical vibrations proved lethal to their cellular structure. Despite our best efforts to provide medical care, all rescued passengers have died from complications related to proximity to human beings. Final casualty count: 49,738 fatalities. Her voice cracked slightly on the final sentence, but she continued. This incident has revealed a critical gap in our first contact and rescue protocols. Recommendation: all future rescue operations involving unknown alien species should be conducted remotely until biological compatibility can be verified. The human tendency to provide direct, hands-on assistance, while admirable, may be lethal to species that evolved in less hostile environments than Earth. She closed the communication device and looked at her senior officers. I want every detail of this mission documented and distributed to every human fleet in the galaxy. Other ships need to learn from our mistake. We can't bring these people back, but we can make sure their deaths weren't completely meaningless. Over the following days, as the fleet traveled toward New Geneva Colony, the story of the rescue mission spread throughout human space and beyond. The aliens who had always called humans Deathworlders now had proof that the name was more accurate than anyone had realized. Some species viewed the incident as evidence that humans were too dangerous to interact with. Others saw it as a tragic example of good intentions gone wrong. But among humans themselves, it became a turning point in how they approached their role in the galaxy. They were the survivors, the fighters, the ones who never gave up when faced with impossible odds. But they were also walking weapons whose very presence could be lethal to gentler forms of life. It was a responsibility they had never asked for, but one they would have to carry for as long as they traveled among the stars. The human fleet reached New Geneva Colony 3 days later, carrying the crystalline bodies of 49,738 beings who had died not from the dangers of space, but from an act of kindness by creatures who never learned that sometimes the greatest mercy is to stay away.